What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I want to upgrade the front sway bar in my 66 Mustang from that stock size, which I believe was 11/16 of an inch or just under 3/4 of an inch, to this larger 1 1/8 inch diameter bar. This is going to be a welcome improvement to the car, so I'm anxious to get it on there. And what you're going to get with this kit are 2 sets of end links. So you're going to get all the pieces that you need there to secure this to the car. And then you're going to get some new bushings to hold that bar into the stock location. You will reuse the bolts, the nuts and bolts that hold these to the car, but everything else is going to be new. And it's going to bolt right into the same location. You don't have to drill any new holes. You don't have to modify the lower control arms of the car. It's just unbolt it and bolt it in. Just a couple of socket wrenches and then away you go. So let's get started. So I like to use one of these generic creepers to get in and out of underneath the car. I use some cardboard that I laid down just so you can slide on easier. And of course the car, I already have it jacked up in anticipation of a good time. So let's go ahead and jump under there and I'll show you what we need to unbolt. So hopefully your car looks something like this underneath. So we're gonna have this mount right here underneath the frame rail. That's gonna support the bar with the bushing. Same thing on this side, you've got another one here. And we're gonna reutilize these bolts, so hold on to those. And then in the lower control arm, there's gonna be the head of the bolt here and the nut is on this end. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to go the other way, whether this bolt is supposed to be facing down. I don't know how that goes, but this car and my last 2 cars, all 3 of them, the stock bar had the bolt facing up, so I'm just going to recreate that. And of course the same thing on this side, the head of the bolt's here. So let's go ahead and get these unbolted, and then we'll unbolt these brackets here and pull this bar out of the way. Well, I guess that's no good anymore. That's all right, we got new bolts, so I'm glad that broke here, not on the car when I was driving it. Yeah, look at that thing, was rusted all the way down to, man, there's just nothing left of that guy. All right, let's put some new hardware in there. Actually, let's get the rest of this off first. Here's a chance to see the diameter difference between these 2 bars, the old one and then the new one. So yeah, much larger setup. So now we want to get these bushings ready, and they just split like this, and then you can wrap it around the bar. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some grease on the inside of these bushings so that these won't squeak when we have it on the car. And then there's also this Zerk fitting on here, so down the road you can pull this cap off and apply grease to that Zerk, and it will squirt through here and it'll grease up inside. So let's get some on there and get the bar ready to install. I just use some high temperature wheel bearing grease to put inside here. You can use some white lithium grease, but I don't like that stuff because it dries up and hardens over time. So I like something like this. All right, so this bar goes in the same way that you took the other one out. If you feed one end in there, then you can come back over here and feed that one in. And then we'll just flip this around like that. Thing over here. And If you have some help, it would be helpful, because you got to hold this up in place on those fasteners and put those nuts back on that you just took off. But you got to have the bar facing the right way first. All right, once you get the bar flipped around the right way, then you can put these nuts on there, because this wouldn't fit with the way these tie rods are. Also, I had to notch out just the front edge of this because of this piece where the tie rod clips into. This bracket was just touching, so I just took a little bit off, like a 1/4 of an inch off the edge there, which isn't going to hurt anything. All right, we don't need to fully tighten this down. I still want to do the other side, and then we can do all this stuff up and then come back and tighten everything down. Okay, for the end link, we have a certain order. You need to have, the head of the bolt, washer, this one of these bushing pieces, you need to have this kind of the same setup. And we're going to need to take this apart because we want one of these to wrap around the lower control arm, and the other one of these to wrap around the end of the new sway bar. So this is the first piece that we're going to put up there. And then we're going to want to put a bushing and a washer on top of that. And then this spacer. And also notice that these washers they're concave, so they go a certain way. Think about them as they need to wrap around the bushing piece. Feed that through the end of the sway bar. Put the last bushing piece, and again, also notice that this edge here, these little pieces need to go towards towards what we're sandwiching, whether it's the sway bar or the lower control arm. The last washer on top, and then the nut. And before we tighten this down, let's go to the other side real quick. Get this up through here. We're going to sandwich the lower control arm with the bushing and the washer, spacer, washer, then bushing. The last bushing and the last washer, and then the nut. And now we can go through and start tightening everything down. I'm going to start with the end links, and then we'll come back and do the bushing mounts last. You want to notice how much you have at the end of that bolt from the end link. I've got about 3/4 of an inch or so sticking out above the nut, and make sure you want the same on both sides. These need to be nice and snug. You're not going to crush these bushings, but you are going to squish them a little bit so it's good and secure around both ends of the bar. All right, guys, that's it. That is a front sway bar installed. Again, really simple. I think you guys could do this, just a couple of sockets, 9/16 and a 1/2 inch is all I needed to disassemble that and put in the new bar. Also that the mount bracket that goes on the frame down there, I had to notch that out just the tiniest little bit. It didn't affect the bracket at all. So if you guys, when you're in there, if it's in the way, just take a grinder and take the edge of that and takes it right off. And then everything else just bolts right in. So this bolt that broke, I'm glad that I was in here servicing this and taking this apart, because that probably, as much as that has necked down and busted there, there's just nothing left, and this thing probably would have broke on just a spirited drive. So I'm glad I got that out of there and got some new hardware in there. Now I'm anxious to take the car out and drive it around. Adding just the front bar is you're going to feel What it's going to do is that when you go around a corner, the front would normally dive a little bit and would be what we call pushing. And you'll have some understeer, and that's a safer setup for any vehicle. But when you add this front bar, what it's going to do, it's going to stiffen up that front end so the front end won't dive as much. In fact, it will kind of keep the car more level. It's not going to keep it level, but it'll keep it more level. And when you couple that with additional suspension modifications, when you got stiffer springs, I got those stiffer springs in the back, stiffer springs in the front. If you add things like subframe braces or things like a panhard bar or a rear sway bar, you can start to make the car more neutral and make the car a little more predictable, because you can steer with the car and the throttle, not just the steering wheel. But that's a little more farther down the road in terms of complexity and what you need to do with that. But this is one of the first upgrades in the front, and then I'd like to work my way back and start upgrading the rest of the stuff as we go that way and make this car more fun to drive. So I'm anxious to get out and drive it around and see how it goes. So guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.